Good morning, everyone. I mean, it's 1. Technically not morning anymore, but I for sure just woke up. Let me switch the screen. Hey, there we go. How's everyone doing today? Hey, Junester5. Welcome to the chat. It's been a long time. I'm opening Unreal at the same time, just so that we can yeah, I know it's Joanna. For some people, I can keep track of them. It gets difficult after a while, but I'm never too sure to just like shout out your name, right? Right. Good mesh in the meantime. Hey Cairo, welcome to the chat. How's it going? What? Might be a bit of like a, what do you say, like a scandalous morning because I just woke up. I literally just got out of bed. Let's have a look. Currently having a look at some of the meshes that I have in my scene. See if we can find a good indicator for Vertex paint. Paint. Awesome. Okay, got a good example. Sweet. All right. Let's dive into some questions first, though. Because we got a bunch from check. Got a bunch from Louis Mesquita. That's good. And then we got a Nanite question as well. I was expecting more questions for Unreal Engine 5 actually, but that's all cool. All right, so let's dive into it. So the first question from Louis Mesquita, let me add that to the list, is: do you think that with this Nanite technology coming up, there will be more demand and production time going towards sculpting instead of optimization? Would it be reasonable to start investing in sculpting now? Yeah, would it be reasonable to start investing into sculpting now? Look, at this point, it's super specific, right? I was talking to some people about it too, where Nanite is only in Unreal Engine at the moment. So I don't think that's gonna change in the foreseeable future. The tech behind it is cool, and what Unreal Engine is doing is really interesting. But we have to also keep in mind that Unreal Engine is really trying to bridge the gap between movies and games, so that they can cater towards both sides of the spectrum, right? Because even if we look at the map that they just pushed out, the biggest question for games will definitely be file sizes. Like even at this point, even with all the amazing optimization that they did, it still has a long way to go. And also, I was reading some threads from, I think, was it Ryan Benno on Twitter? I think so. He mentioned that even if everything is super nice, like just getting something really high poly into the engine takes a long time. Just because it needs to calculate like all the positions of the vertices, right, before it can make it into an actual mesh. And just that factor alone is a major deal breaker for like game dev. which is heavy on iteration, right? Because say, for example, you throw in like I did, like a high poly fish. Oh, one of the things is missing. I need to re-import that whole model, and that takes me, again, like whatever time it took me to re-import. So I think I was at least 5 minutes that I was just waiting for like a high poly mesh. Like the nanite part is super quick, but the high poly, just getting that into an engine is super, I mean, it's super slow at the moment. Maybe there will be cool optimizations and like workflow adjustments going forward, but at this point, will there be more demand and production time going to sculpting instead of optimization? If we just look at that, probably. Because if we just compare sculpting to optimization, yeah. Like if you're just working with Unreal Engine, like the less you... I mean, the industry in general is moving to like less and less optimization, right? Especially looking at Unreal Engine, where the lots get calculated automatically. You don't have to do that. Light maps get automatically made for you. You have to do some adjustments in specific cases but for, I'm gonna say like 80% of the time, it's pretty good. So the industry in general is going... The bigger our budgets, the less we have to worry about optimization. Hey Scott, welcome to the chat. It did say there was a feature that didn't make it to the early release, but yeah, it was gonna want to use 10 million models anyway. Yeah, exactly. It's early days too, right? We'll see what that exactly means, but it is a cool feature, but it's not like an industry changing feature that is gonna completely make every big AAA studio out there like rear their heads and be like, oh shit, we need to do that instantly. At most, it just makes slightly higher poly counts viable. Yeah, for sure, but it's super limited, right? I think we're gonna dive into that a little bit later too. Hey Zex, how's it going? Welcome to the chat. Yeah, this was a good question, Louis. Thank you so much. You got another couple questions coming on, right? So let me just So the next question from Louis Mesquita is also related to the last one. If real-time ray tracing or Lumen get more reliable in the future, how will that influence the workload of dedicated lighting artists? That's a good question. I mean, for starters, I'm not a lighting artist myself, right? But again, like even proprietary engines, they have their own solutions to lighting that we've already seen. I would assume that some engines probably already have like Lumen based lighting examples where they have like full-time real-time GI. I mean, real-time movable lights GI. Some engines already have that, I'm assuming. Especially the ones that are more like on the cutting edge, right? Because you have to think, a lot of worlds, in a lot of open worlds, that's their bread and butter, right? Like the light is always going to be moving, you're always going to be recalculating. So for dedicated engines for open world games that have day and night cycles, which is, I mean, almost all of them at this point, right? Especially the big AAA ones. They already have their own in-house solution for that. Which might even be somewhat the same as Lumen is doing at this point. Because I think, I haven't worked with Unity that much, but I think that they already had a real-time global illumination solution for like a couple of years. I don't know how accurate it was, or if that's even true that it's full real time. Maybe it's like partially baked or something. But yeah, how will it influence the workload of dedicated lighting artists? It's probably the same as with the Nanite technology, right? It's not going to be this revolutionary thing that is going to completely change everything. It's just, yeah, lighting artists focus on different things then. Because probably the easiest thing to do is worrying about the day and night cycle for a lighting artist, because usually that's already set up. Yeah, usually that's already set up by programmers, or like yeah, by previous entries of the engine, right? Because I'm trying to think my interactions with it. Like I don't think that lighting artists, they obviously had a choice of what they could do with the dynamic lights, like the sunlight. But most of the time was just spent on other things, like lighting up static lights, or like smaller areas. So yeah, I don't think it's going to change much for lighting artists. I mean, if we even look at the Unreal Engine 5 lighting artists, right? If they're going to be dedicated to like Unreal Engine 5, how will it influence them? It's just going to make their workflow easier. It's not going to have a drastic effect on them. It's just going to mean that they have to worry less about maybe placing fill lights to counteract, or like to fake the bounces, right? So there's none of that anymore, but the rest of the workflow is still going to be the same. I mean, don't get me wrong, it saves like a massive amount of time. So it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same that we're constantly discussing when it comes to Unreal Engine 5 and also future upcoming technologies, right? Technology is moving forward, and it's gonna make our lives easier. Like the more development that goes into it, the easier life becomes for artists. So the more accessible it becomes, right? That's also happening with lighting artists at this point. It doesn't mean that they're going to be obsolete, or that there's going to be less of them. Because I mean, you can look at the trend of what worlds, like game worlds, have become, right? Especially, I always refer to like the open world angle of things, because the worlds haven't gotten smaller. They just have gotten way bigger over the last couple of years. And the people working on those games, like the numbers have just ballooned, right? And I don't think that's gonna stop. Because what I think is gonna happen is that the worlds are not gonna get that much bigger anymore. There will still be like people chasing, like, I don't know, recreations of Earth or something like that, right? Where it's like almost 1-to-1. But the worlds are going to be denser now. So I'm really interested in seeing that. And that means that even if we go denser instead of bigger, we still need more people to fill up those worlds, right? So I think the same is going to happen with lighting artists as well. More dense and more richer worlds that need all the help from dedicated lighting and environment artists. Godot has real-time GI? That looked good? Oh yeah, you mentioned that, I think. I haven't looked at it yet. Hey, daar heb ik too. Hope you're having a nice Sunday as well. Welcome to the chat. Yeah, this is interesting because everyone... I mean, I get it. I get why, right? Like, it's so exciting to see, like, all the new stuff coming out from Unreal Engine 5. And I was really... I mean, I still am really excited about Lumen and how easy it makes an artist's life. But, yeah, in, like, a game dev example, you're still gonna have dedicated lighting artists. Because, I mean, just from, like, a simple perspective that whatever time you're spending on lighting as an environment artist will not be spent on creating environments or meshes, right? Which are a big part of the game too. So yeah, but I think it's really interesting that they realized that real-time ray tracing was too resource intensive, and that we have Lumen as an example of that, what it can be. And I assume that every big company has their own Lumen in progress, right? We just can't see it. Like, the proprietary engines, they are not as open as Unreal Engine is with their features, right? Some companies try to be, but they can't. They don't really have the same luxury or, like, I don't know, openness surrounding it from like an Unreal Engine side of things, where Unreal Engine has set itself up as like an engine developer, right? And then most of it goes towards like Epic Games, but then also supporting all the other developers that work with it, where an in-house engine is almost specifically made for use cases of different studios. So yeah, it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see. For sure. I mean, it's so cool to play around with it. That's for sure. Okay. Next question. Also from Louis Mesquita. How do you see the influence of Nanite in vegetation creation workflows? Are we coming soon to a no-bake, no-alpha approach to leaves, for example? This is an interesting one, right? Because this is what I alluded to in the beginning. Nanite has a lot of restrictions with a really dense mesh. And I mean dense in like vertices or triangles or whatever, right? Comes a really big downside, is that it becomes like exponentially more expensive to do any calculations based on vertices. So that means that if you have like a world position offset for wind going through your object, that's no longer feasible, because it has to calculate 10 times the amount of vertices that it had to do before. So it makes it not feasible. And you alluded to it yourself as well. No alpha. You can only do opaque shaders with Nanite. So no translucency or anything like that either. No alpha. So yeah, right now, what Nanite is really made for, in my opinion, is what we've seen in the showcase, right? It's really organic, high density rock formations. That is like the perfect use case for Nanite, because they're never gonna move, and you can cobble all that detail in there without having to worry too much about trying to replace it with like a normal map or baking it down with like a unique normal map, right? We got a question, but can't you use Nanite for static meshes and do more polygon heavy meshes for foliage with normal tech? Hold on. Do more polygon heavy meshes for foliage. Yeah, but as soon as the foliage needs to move, you can't use it, right? Oh, you mean, okay, so Nanite for static meshes that don't move. Okay. And then more polygon heavy meshes for foliage. with normal tech. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing already now. If you look at the grass that is in a lot of games, like Ghost of Tsushima, for example, that is polygon based. That's no longer texture and alpha based. So that's definitely a direction that we're moving towards, yeah. But not with Nanite, though. That's a good point. Good point to bring up. Like, I mean, yeah, just in general. It's I mean, it's not a trade-off, right? It's something that we were already doing even before Nanite. So the only thing that Nanite changes is that we don't have to create like well, don't necessarily have to create unique normal maps for rock formations or like really organic shapes, right? But with Nanite, we can go heavier on that part. Nanite, no, Nanite is specifically for static meshes. Like we can, at this point, I should say that, we can only use that with, hold on, where was my train of thought? I got confused by your hell yeah, Ghost of Tsushima. Since static rocks won't take up as much. Well, it depends, right? They're still gonna take up a budget. If you're mentioning that, it's just gonna be a different kind of budget that is more optimized in its own way. But yeah, we can't use Nanite for foliage because foliage needs to move, right? The only case where you could probably have it on foliage, but then it can't move. That's like a big restriction, right? So maybe for like an interior, maybe for like an ArcViz scene, where you have lots of plants inside of a room, that Nano could work perfectly. But for game applications where there's a lot of for game applications where there's a lot of interaction with foliage usually, right? Because if you think about it, the wind usually blows on the foliage. People interact with the foliage as well when they walk through grass. It's not going to be possible because it has to move and it has to calculate too many points of data at that point. Will we see that in the future? Maybe. I'm pretty sure that at some point in the future, like, operations like that are going to be really feasible, where we can just move stuff real time on like really high density polygon meshes. But yeah, might be 5 years. I don't know. I don't see that happening in the next year, for example. It's probably going to be, because we're talking about raw computing power at that point, right? Where we're talking about the evolution of the games industry in general. Or like, well, not the games industry, but like real-time 3D graphics. So it's not even related to games. So I'm pretty sure that we're gonna see that at some point. But yeah, it's gonna be a while. Hey Rob Shaw, welcome to the chat. How are you doing? I mean, it's interesting to think about like the long distant future, right? Where we're moving towards. Because you can really tell that if we look at Unreal Engine specifically and we forget about like all the proprietary engines for a second, they are trying to build an all-around engine that can handle both movies and also games, right? So they're trying to break down as much of those barriers as possible. They have a modeling toolkit, which is pretty early days, but if you see that evolving in the future, that can have a big impact. And it already does, right? If you look at the medieval town that Quixel did, you can create some really cool stuff there. Yeah, I think the only thing that they needed to do for that example was they had to move it to a 3D program to just create a second UV set. But that's something that easily can be done in Unreal Engine at some point, right? It's just probably not a priority at that point. But yeah, I mean, the future for Unreal Engine is going to be really interesting, especially because it's so artist focused, right? Especially if we look at Nanite again. Not having to worry about LODs at all is amazing. And I think that's probably like the most exciting part about Nanite is just, as an artist, you don't have to worry about LOD creation anymore. For those specific Nanite examples, right? So that is probably the most interesting thing that a lot of people overlook. I'm just casually waiting until the day I don't have to retopo my zebra sculpt. Do you retopo your zebra sculpt? I don't do that. Especially if we're talking about organic stuff. I just decimate, bake it on that, and then it's done. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Look, you need clean topology if you're going to animate it, where for rocks, you don't need that. I think we're long past the day where we need to nicely retopologize rocks. I mean, you're just wasting time at that point. Do you clean up the decimated models though? Depends. Depends on tech restrictions, usually. Because I mean, if we're working within like a tight budget, what I would usually do, it also depends on the shape too, right? I mean, you still need to clean up your geo after decimate. Not in 100% of the cases though. Not in 100% of the cases. In my experience, decimate in zebras can generate some very nasty and narrow tries. That is very true. So that's why I also said it highly depends on the shape of the rock, right? If we're talking about like really unique shapes, then some manual cleanup is definitely gonna happen. What I think is cool is that, yeah, I was using Blender for decimation, right? Where you can make a vertex group for your decimation algorithm so that it's gonna decimate sections differently. So it's gonna treat them as like this needs to be like a high density section, and this chunk needs to be like a low section. But yeah, like retopologizing your zebra sculpt, nah. Remesh by decimating zebra, shade smooth, done. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's... I can honestly not remember. It's been a while since I've done rock specifically, right? But I can honestly not remember when I manually fix stuff. Or like when I manually retopologized. I definitely fix stuff manually, but... What's the average strike count for a rock? Depends. It's hard to say. Because even if you say like for a normal big rock, what is a normal big rock? I mean, are we talking a cliff about like 10 meters high or something like that? It also depends on the structure of the rock itself, right? Like what is it made of? Like yeah, it's difficult to say. If we're just talking a boulder, you can go really low. If you're talking about a really intricate cliff that has been eroded by wind, that has like more intricate detail, right? A cliff can easily go more than 1K for sure. Yeah. Like a boulder, you can probably keep that pretty low. I'm just living in the past with low poly count stuff. Yeah, you'd be surprised what you can get away with just in raw poly count these days. It's just the only thing that I try to keep in mind is that the silhouette is looking nice and that you don't see too many jagged edges on the silhouette, because that's going to kill the illusion. Like the interior sides, if you have them, like don't matter that much, but yeah. My mentor told me to decimate everything. 100%. Do it. Yeah, like yeah, just decimate it. It makes your life so much easier. All right. We got yeah, if you got any questions, by the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. Solemono, thanks for the follow, by the way. I appreciate it. But yeah, if you got any questions, anything, I mean, anything relevant to game dev, Unreal Engine 5 is a big topic at this point, right? Your personal portfolio work, just let me know and we can discuss it. Okay, Iwana has a question for us. I was wondering if you could show us an example of the mesh you used for vertex painting and how low or high poly you should be going for a nice blend. That is a good question. Let me click over my screen as well. It depends on the kind of blend that you're doing. I always suggest a hide blend. Switch it over. There we go. So these are some of my walls, right, that I'm using in my current environment. And I'm really interested in vertex blending on these parts. So if we go to textures. Oh, no, paint colors. This is the density that I'm using currently. Because with a height blend, it's gonna use the height map to blend it even better than it does with like normal vertex paint, right? Normal vertex paint, honestly, looks pretty shit. Like, I mean, you need some additional detail in there. You need like a height map to influence the vertices a little bit. Let me see. It's the red channel, right? Yeah. So you can see that this gives me like enough control. If I go really low on the opacity, I can really just specifically do stuff here. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing it with a height map. This is sort of the density that I would use if at a point there is a drop-off point where it's not worth using vertex paint, but you should go into just using unique maps for your buildings, right? So let's say, for example, imagine that instead of this damage that we're doing to the plaster, it is like rust or something like that. If you want like really thin lines of rust, it's almost better to go look at either a unique texture if you can afford it, or you go to like a second UV channel where you can really specifically add like textures of rust, for example. But yeah, I mean, you can go crazier than this, right? I don't know if I have like another example here. I kept it pretty tame on these examples. Let's have a look. I'm thinking if I have like another good example. Probably, because this is a flat wall, right? So this might make for like a better example. Just take like a lighting angle like this. Go to mesh paint again. We even have. Yeah. So like that is a sort of density that I'm using here. It's a little bit tighter than on the other wall, right? But it's not overly tight. And yeah, this is I have to check out which channel. Keep forgetting. There we go. I think it's a red channel. Yeah. So this is just painting between like two different stone textures, right? Like a more random one and then like a more straight one, so I can get like a specific look. And this is again using height maps, right? You can get really specific things. You can get like a really specific look. So you can see the transition that's happening if I just click through like the two textures. So yeah, that's probably the density that I would aim for these kind of walls. Again, you could go higher than this. In my case, I didn't need to. If you have like, what is a good example? Like more tiling in your textures, or if you have more detail in your textures as well, then you can definitely go up higher as well to just get like more control over it too. But yeah, like even with this amount of density, right? Like you can get a good amount of control over it. So yeah, thanks so much for the question, Ioana. I hope that answers it. I don't know if you have anything to add on to that. Feel free to just throw it in the chat. Do you use parallax occlusion on most stone walls? It depends. So on flat walls, yes. On those end pieces, no. That is raw geometry. So like a... what is a good example here? I mean, we could take this, right? In this case, you don't even need parallax occlusion on this. But it just looks nice. I just like the look of it. So these pillars, for example, that's all raw geometry, because that's a use case that parallax occlusion can't really deal with. Like parallax occlusion works best when you can't really see it at glancing angles, and usually on flatter surfaces it works really well. Because again, if you have rounded surfaces, that means that you can probably see it at a glancing angle, which is going to break the illusion. So yeah, these have parallax occlusion mapping, and then I sort of barrier these off with these pillars. So that means that, one, it looks cool because now we have, if I just add like a light in here. For one, it looks cool because you get these pillars sticking out from the walls. But it also means that you can't really see it at a glancing angle. Right? I'm trying to keep people from looking at the wall at like a really glancing angle. So these pillars serve two purposes. Which is pretty cool. Sneaky. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing you need to do, right? Just you would be surprised how much you see that in games where they put something in your way to not see the parallax or something, right? There are cases where you can't really avoid it. For example, if you're coming up the stairs and like, I don't know, the floor mat has like parallax occlusion mapping or something. You can't really block the view from that point, right? But yeah, it works well. Do you have dithering on the pillars that are intersecting with the walls? No, it would be too costly. Too costly for the visual gain. Like it doesn't matter that much. Like the textures are gonna blend in with each other, sorta, right? if you can see here, hold on, let me just add a light here as well. If you really focus on it, I mean, you can see the seam, right? It's not a big surprise, but the gain that you would get from dithering these two together is probably not worth the performance sacrifice. Oh, that habe ich too. What kind of height blend do you use for those that the bricks don't seem to be intersecting? What kind of height blend do you use for those that the bricks don't seem to be intersecting? Oh, you mean on this texture, right? That is just tweaking the height maps, really. Just making sure that the values of the height map sort of fall off. It's been a while since I've done this, but let me... Where are my other panels? There we go. Okay, let's have a look. It's just really playing around with like the height texture here. And getting good values in there. So that once you start blending, you don't have like the large sections like intersecting with each other, right? Which is really important. But this is also... This texture in itself is really forgiving. Like, if you really start to look up close, right? You can see that this is a stone texture from like the one of the sections of stone, right? Intersecting with like another stone section. So let me highlight that here. There we go. So we have like this stone is from like texture 1, and then we have like these stones from texture 2. So there is some intersecting happening for sure, but yeah, you can't really see it unless you're really up close. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. Yeah, it works nicely, right? Like, unless you really zoom in, like, really close. Did you sculpt the wall material? Yes, I did. I did a... Wait, hold on. What am I saying? I think the first iteration that I did was sculpted. So... I think the straight wall is sculpted, and then the more broken up wall is Substance Designer. Let me just double check that. Oh. I think they might both be Substance Designer. It's been so long. Browse. Yeah, they're both Substance Designer. Cool. But yeah, I mean, for this, it's super nice to have the control of Substance Designer, right? So that I can control the cracks and all that. I can play around with it really quickly. For the normal stone wall, you could probably use ZBrush. I mean, you could use it for both cases, but I like the flexibility that Substance Designer gives me. Thanks, Leon. Was about the painting. I see it works so nicely. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like really forgiving textures, these, right? Do Do you know if there's a way so Unreal Engine automatically disables sRGB for your ARM textures? I'm not sure actually. I don't think I've ever looked at that. Oh, okay. He told me the session was still going. Okay, that makes sense. Welcome, Ben. Yeah, the small rocks is actually just like I mean, they're really, really simple. I don't really particularly like the look of them, but it's really small, simple shapes thrown into like a tile sampler and just thrown all over the place, and then just blended within the crevices of like all the stone textures. So annoying to manually have to disable it anytime. I'm thinking at the moment. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that if you... Yeah, I don't know if I do it manually. Huh, interesting. Yeah, because I usually just drop it into like a material, right? And it sorts itself out. But yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Joanna. It was really great. Let's switch back. Doo-doo-doo. What is this post by Tyler Smith? Let's have a look. Raux. Yeah. Really simple shapes as well. Yeah, he just decimated them too. Yep. Software used, X normal. Damn. That's some old school stuff. X normal in Photoshop. So they textured this in Photoshop. Interesting. Well, they might have done like mask setup or something in Photoshop. Like just automate it. And then the shader takes care of the rest. Yeah. Could be something like that. Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Let's have a look. Let's see if I didn't miss any questions, right? What's next? Crazy Bump? Oh my god. I don't think I've ever used Crazy Bump, man. But we used Endu and Dedu, though. Before Quixel was the Quixel that everyone knew. Oh yeah. God damn it. Such a pain to texture in Dedu. Such a pain. Alright, people. If there are no other questions, then I think this is a good time to call it. I need to... This is something that I want to remind everyone of, though. This is not only for AMA, right? This is not only like a question session, but if you're in the community, you can share your work in the AMA questions and get feedback on your work as well. I'm gonna do it for next week. I'm gonna put out like a big reminder that people can post their own work to get feedback and like overpaints, because I want to start doing that more and more. So yeah, if you're interested in that, just go to our community Discord, and then in AMA questions, you can just throw some stuff in there. Didn't have any work. I mean, what do you mean? We can still talk about the scene that you're working on. Could be interesting. All right, cool. But yeah, if you really enjoyed this chat, feel free to join. Like every week, I'm here answering questions, talking about art. And if you're interested in our community, you can also go to our community through our Patreon if you're interested in joining. I'll have the link up in just a sec. It's yeah, it's a community of environment artists. So if you're interested in joining, feel free to do so through the Patreon. Thanks so much for all being here. And I've got enough critiques on my own at the moment. That's fair. That's understandable. I'm curious for next week. Hell yeah, me too. So yeah, thanks all for being here. And have a nice Sunday, everyone. I'm looking forward to the next one. See ya.